to stage the Golden Gate International Exposition, sort of a regional boosterism World's Fair. And I've always been interested in the site as a sort of man-made creation or construct of this kind of natural fantasy. You'll see here some archival photos of making the island literally by dredging up silt and soil from the bottom of the bay. There are which is one of the reasons that the island remains unstable. It's actually sunk 9 feet since the '89 Lower Creator earthquake, and it's on a fault line, which makes it, along with the toxins we're going to talk about, a very dangerous site, and of course one of the, for better or worse, one of the reasons it's been difficult to move forward on some of the redevelopment plans that have been floated in the last 15 years since the base has been ostensibly turned over to the public. Here you see it's a really interesting shot, I think, of the historian of utopian architecture, Franco Borsi, who says that utopias are always constituted from the beginning by a separation from what is already conventionally thought of as the landscape, and always start as a staging ground or a large construction site. And of course, staging ground is exactly what the island became for the World's Fair, the Golden Gate Expo. Here you see a wonderful little artist imagining. There are actually 17 different colors that were invented for the lighting scheme, and over 10,000 different kinds of plants and trees brought in. A number of the plant clippings were then taken by visitors and have been taken home and planted, so you have this kind of odd history, or a site, non-site history of these sort of artificial environments that were built on this island that have then spread throughout the Bay Area ecologically, even as within 4 years, with the exception of 3 buildings, everything on this island has been was taken down. Here's a scene at night. Because in 1941, this island was originally, after the expo, was going to be San Francisco International Airport, which would have been really fun and exciting to think about today. However, the Navy took it over 6 months prior to the beginning of the hostilities known as World War II, basically in anticipation of a coming Pacific War. Originally it was going to be a temporary takeover. They, of course, kept the island until 1993, and ultimately, in exchange, gave San Francisco access to Navy land, which is now where SFO is. So for 50-odd years, the U.S. Navy had access to Treasure Island, which was used as its own kind of training ground and its own kind of real estate theater, in the sense that during both the war and during the Cold War era, a lot of what was going on Treasure Island were rehearsals or practice with various kinds of potential military catastrophes, including nuclear and radiological spills. There were a series of simulated nuclear bomb explosions that were actually performed on the island, very scary for Bay Area residents, and a lot of use of radiological material to practice cleanups for the expected ecological disasters that the Navy almost was already in advance anticipating. So this is this great verb tense that we ended up having to use in our own methodology of what will have to have been learned in order to deal with the consequences of what we're playing with. And this is precisely why Treasure Island, which has a number of sites that are now poisoned with radiological material, and the Navy has defended its case by basically claiming to be the world's expert in dealing with radiological cleanups. This is Treasure Island Day. The Navy has ostensibly given the island over to the city since 1993. It's still in a sort of bureaucratic tangle of what will happen next. Mayor Willie Brown, it was going to be an Olympic training center. It was going to be a women's prison. It was going to be they were going to ship a bunch of redwoods from Northern California and have it be a redwood grove. Currently there are 2,000 residents living there in low-income housing, mostly families of color in the most dangerous toxic parts of the island, which we'll look at in a little bit. And as a stipulation in your lease, you have to agree not to plant anything or eat anything that grows out of the ground, while being reassured that it's completely safe. But one of the things that Barge was most interested in originally thinking about investigating the site and doing a kind of mapping or a touristic practice was the degree to which people from the Bay Area, those who've even been to Treasure Island, generally go to turn your back on the island itself in order to take in the view. And this, of course, is what the view is precisely what makes real estate and developing firms salivate over this site. It's precisely because you want to not investigate what is the sociological, economic, and political ground on which it is necessary in order to create such vantage points, but instead you go to turn your back on the military history and the sort of invisible toxins in the air in order to take in these sort of postcard views. And you'll see at the end of the talk, part of our touristic practice is to attempt to create what I call counter postcards, or counter mappings, or again, a detour. So one of the practices that residents have to begin to learn is almost this kind of vernacular hermeneutics of reading the landscape. Again, when you have things that are largely disappeared from view, buried histories, and toxic things that are entangled in this kind of paranoid landscape, a lot of the residents talk to me in terms of how you decipher these kinds of languages, this kind of language on the site, how you sort of make sense of the bureaucratic stuff you get from the Navy and the EPA that says everything's safe, you know, stories about black trucks that come out at night. And so there's this vernacular knowledge about the island that typical kind of cartographic and even artistic practices don't know how to deal with. And so Barge had to sort of respond to that, and we'll see in a little bit how some of that came about. So you see we do a little sort of composting, harvesting of the found language in order to make these kind of pile-ups, which then become, we won't have time, but they become performed alongside other kinds of found language, the list of created colors, the list of toxins. They're all in the guidebook, which you can download from the Barge website, as a kind of performative poetics, or a reading. Again, taking a reading. You think of taking